I think there should be no limits on what people can joke about. I think every comedian thinks about the jokes they make and they decide whether they can justify the jokes that they do. And we all do it, we all think about it. And the problem is that comedians tend to go into these sensitive areas and they tend to push these boundaries. And sometimes they get it wrong, sometimes they misjudge it. But I feel like we are moving into this kind of culture of offence now. I mean, it used to be that every now and then someone like Frankie Boyle would make a joke and then the press would say, oh, we should apologise. But now it seems to be happening all the time. Comedians are just constantly telling jokes, then apologising for jokes. It's just a routine now.
And I remember watching Eddie Murphy, Delirious and Raw back in... I mean, that came out in the mid-'80s.
Big stand-up show.
Big stand-up show. But if Eddie Murphy did what he did now, talking about Luther Vandross having Kentucky Fried Chicken lips and Elvis and... He wouldn't survive, and that's the problem. It's about knowing... I mean, look, we're on TV now. We're bounded by Ofcom. If we say anything that's derogatory, then obviously I think our careers are done and dusted. And I think that's what comedians have to be mindful by what they...
What's changed between now and then? If you say... But he has survived. He went on to become an amazing Hollywood actor and has made fortunes and been loved by everybody.
But he certainly couldn't do what he did back then, because I think now we are living at a time where we have to be sensitive.
Your example is a very subjective example. Like, I understand your point that it is an offence. Like, everyone's entitled to be offended by whatever they want, but who decides where the line is? Who makes that judgment?
I sometimes wonder whether, you know, lots of Christians might say this, is that they seem to be OK to be made jokes of, but there are other religions that are much more sensitive, perhaps because of more recent history, because they feel they're more recognisable on the street, and so on. So you wouldn't necessarily know who's a Christian and who's not walking down the street.
Yes.
But somebody clearly wearing a face veil, you obviously know that they are Muslim, right? So then they feel slightly called out about it. But I even recently, I went to go and see Book of Mormon, which is unbelievably offensive.
Incredibly offensive, yes.
And that's sort of mocking the Mormon religion, the Christian religion. I just couldn't believe it was still, you know, but clearly it's been... People flock to that show.
That's a very good example. So why are we ring-fencing certain
hugely.
things?
I mean, you could never repeat any of what's said on the show.
Certainly not at this time
I mean, it's a brilliant show, but...
but why should certain topics be off-limits, ring-fenced away from offence, and then other things are OK to attack? I mean, personally, I sort of think if you're going to mock a religious practice, that's fair game, you know? I mean, if we talk about punching up and punching down, you can't punch much higher than God, can you?
I think it's about being mindful. You know, like my mum is a devout Christian, and when sometimes we go out to dinner or friends' parties and someone will mock a priest or say something, I mean, she will laugh about it, but if something else is said, then she would politely say, listen, let's be mindful here that, you know, it's a religion, they are priests, and you've got to be careful what you say.
Sometimes my view is religion has lasted for thousands of years. Christian, you know, religion, it's bigger than one joke.
Surely.
So surely it can withstand all... You know, isn't that the point of it? It's bigger and better.
Where do we go? Where do we go? If we open the door and we say, well, look, we can allow anyone to say what they want to say, then where do we go? Is there a limit?
I think it's this, isn't it? That actually you should be able to make a joke about anybody, absolutely anything at all, as long as the intent is right. Now, if your intent is just to make people laugh, in my case with Khan, it's to sort of try and bring people together, that's a good thing. In the case of Boris Johnson making those quips, then you question, well, what is his intent?
But did you ever fear
is he siding with the alt-right? Is he trying to get a populist...
But when you were doing Citizen Khan, did you fear that you may be offending certain groups or audiences by some of the content?
Not at all. You know, and the BBC really backed me. I remember we had meetings going, well, actually, we knew that people were going to be offended, but we were just prepared and ready for it.
There is literally nothing that I, as a comedian, couldn't joke about that might upset someone in an... I could tell a knock joke and someone's wife could have been crushed by a heavy door or something, and then that offends them, that upsets them. There is literally no way to judge it.
When somebody wants to back out of something they've said and they meant it, like, oh, it was just a joke. So you're taking it too badly. But when you are the subject of that joke, you sort of know that there was malice intended, but you can't then go back, because then you look like you're being overly sensitive. Does that make sense?
It does, but you're still intuiting a motive there, aren't you? You're still trying to guess what someone's motive is, which you'll never actually know. Are comedians... This is a weird question. Are the standards that comedians, the ones that you're discussing and all of that, is it different if you are a politician? That's an interesting point, because I actually quite like my politicians not to be funny. I think they should be serious and statesmanlike, and I don't think Boris Johnson falls into that category.
Well, the question we should ask, should politicians stop pretending to or trying to be comedians? Because I think that's the question where sometimes, you know, some politicians think that they're funny, some are not. And the ones who are not funny should have just stopped and not even attempt to do it.
Theresa May isn't funny and she doesn't try, does she?